Hi, this is Vince DeGeorge for DTMMB Media. I'm going to do something new this time. Basically, this is going to be the first show in a series of me doing just a little bit of talking. You see, one of the things I have a dream to do is get up one day on stage and do a comedy routine. You know, a little bit of stand-up comedy. It's been something I've wanted to do since I was a kid. Not that I'd consider myself to be an extremely funny person, but I do have my moments. A lot of it is conversation based, not so much doing any kind of bits. But I'd like to come up with some. So what I thought it would be fun is along my journey, and I hope to actually have this completed by 1 year from now. But to kind of document my journey and to kind of let you in on it. And what I'm going to try to do is build an entire set between 45 minutes and an hour, and have the whole thing documented right here with a podcast. So I'll start off with, I'm going to tell a little bit of my background in this story and some of the things that makes me think that I can do this. And then subsequent episodes will be me formulating jokes or going over jokes that I've come up with during the week and how that's going to work into a routine, and along the lines of doing things like tightening them up and testing them out with friends. And, maybe I'll have guests on to kind of help me through the process and see if things are actually funny. This podcast may not be particularly funny, not at first at least, but hopefully as time goes on, I can kind of hone this craft and maybe it'll be funny one day. I plan on doing a little bit of research because that's how I do things. I research them. Of course, I've watched plenty of comedy. I grew up basically in a household where we played old 8-track tapes of things like Steve Martin and George Carlin. I would go to the library and get records of Bill Cosby and listen to them. And I always enjoyed it, and it was something that I always dreamed of doing. And just like many things that you dream to do in your life, you just don't accomplish it. You never go out and try to achieve your goals. Well, I thought this would be a good opportunity, considering I want to start in podcasting and actually get some content out there, and I want to do this stand-up comedy and be involved in comedy in general. I thought this was a great opportunity, and I might as well document it and, possibly make something of it. I would love any kind of feedback that you can give me along the way. If I do something that you think is good, or if you think something maybe is not so funny that I might think is funny, let me know. Eventually I'll be doing this in front of a crowd, and of course not every crowd is the same, but, if you think something's funny, it's pretty likely that a crowd will. If you think something's going to bomb, it's probably going to bomb. I'll have to get over things like stage fright. I've given lots of presentations. I've worked in jobs where I've had to make PowerPoint presentations and give them in front of anything from VIPs to CEOs. So I can talk in front of people, but I think it's going to be a completely different situation once I get up there and actually try to tell jokes. That first moment where you tell a joke and no one reacts in the audience, I would imagine that's probably one of the most terrifying things in the world to be up against. So I'm going to have to learn how to face that during this as well. So maybe I'll try to do some, maybe it's just some live shows with friends and family, people I trust at first, and I'll record those, and we'll see how those go along. I would say I've kind of had the bug to do this since when I was a young lad at a ripe age of about 4 years old. I was something called the Prince of the Harvest Homecoming. Now, I live in Louisville, Kentucky now, but right across the river, there's a small town, New Albany, Indiana. And every year they have a Harvest Homecoming Festival. It's obviously like many homecoming festivals that you might be familiar with. Lots of booths set up with local goods being sold. But beforehand they have a parade. Well, I was going to be the prince during this parade. There was, I believe, a prince and a queen and a king. I don't even know what all was involved. I have pictures of myself on a float. Well, I don't even remember this, but my mother can tell this story about, during this contest to make me prince, they had like a stage interview, and so I was up there, and apparently there was some kind of question, and I turned to the crowd and I shrugged my shoulders with I don't know, and it got a huge reaction from the crowd. So what did I do? I turned around and I did it again. I wish I'd known, more particulars about this, but maybe I'd get my mom to kind of refresh me on this story. But the crowd loved it, and, the fact that I turned around and did it right again to try to get that reaction, I was like, yeah, once I heard that story, I must have something in me that makes me want to entertain people. And I was always somewhat of a class clown, I guess, when I was in school. Not, I'd go for the cheap, fart humor and falling out of my chair. Not so much telling jokes, but more physical humor. And it was always something I enjoyed doing. Like I said, I don't particularly think I'm hilarious, but I have my moments. Anyway, now I'm more of what you might call a dry humor. I usually deliver a line that is, with very little reaction. And a lot of times, it goes right over people's heads. Not that it's, sophisticated, but just the fact that my delivery doesn't make it seem funny. The people who pick up on it, seem to think it's pretty funny, but a lot of people just don't kind of get that type of humor that I do. I will sometimes delve into the ridiculous. And I also can go very blue if necessary. I'm not afraid of profanity. I was in the Navy for 10 years, so profanity is almost like a second language to me. Now, speaking of second languages, another thing that I can kind of build maybe on a routine is my wife is Japanese, and we've been married 13 years, and I barely speak any Japanese, and there's kind of some frustration there, especially when my daughter is fluent in Japanese as well. So there's probably some storytelling that I can delve into with that. I do have somewhat of a colorful past. I've had some questionable relationships. I've had made some questionable decisions in my life, so that's always somewhere I can dig into. I'm not afraid to be self-referential and make fun of myself along the way. Of course, everybody loves observational humor, so I'll be trying to throw in, of course, some of that as well. But I really just want to bring you along with this journey with me. The ideas of jokes, the writing of jokes, the practicing and refining, and then eventually the delivery. I think of it somewhat as an art or a craft to be able to deliver a good joke on stage. And I've always appreciated comedy and the work that comedians put into it. You hear about these hard-working comedians like Louis C.K., who, it took him years to kind of refine who he is as a comedian, but he's worked really hard. And then every year he turns around and writes a whole new set. He never goes back and tells his old jokes. So, I think that's impressive. I mean, if you've ever tried to do any writing at all in general, just writing is difficult. But to be able to write comedy and make people laugh and, appeal to such a wide audience, I mean, there's something magical about that, and it's something I've always wanted to do. I've got that yearning to entertain people and to tell jokes and to be funny and to get laughs. So that I'm going to bring you along with that journey. I need to figure out this whole part of the stress of doing a routine live. It's just not going to be like the PowerPoint presentations I did. My humor is also really natural based, where it's based on conversations, where I reference other things based on conversations. I've never had to get in front of a crowd and basically do these comedic observations along the way. I can't just be absurd out of the blue. A lot of times someone will talk about a subject and I'll take it to the extreme, I think there's a lot of things that I do say on Twitter. and you know, I'll get into some of that. Maybe, you know, I can review some of my Twitter posts. I try to be kind of funny there. A lot of that thinking, you know, it basically takes me maybe, you know, 30 or 40 minutes to craft it in the way that I want it, in 140 characters. I would imagine that probably translates a little bit to being able to do a routine, being able to think of those things. However, you know, 140 characters is not going to cut it, even if I do 100 of them for a set. So, you know, I got to kind of think about that. And something I think of is, you think of someone like Rob Delaney, who's hilarious on Twitter, pretty blue. And I remember seeing him, I believe it was on David Letterman. It was on one of the talk shows. It doesn't really matter which one. And I thought his delivery was absolutely horrible. I thought he sucked. And I basically told my friends that thought he was a good comedian that this guy is no good at all. And I started thinking about it, and they started, of course, also, you know, they're like, well, you know, he was on TV where he couldn't quite use the blue humor that he does on Twitter. And it makes sense, you know, if you're taken out of your element, and he had to turn around and try to make jokes clean to be on TV, it just screwed with his delivery. You know, he's completely out of rhythm. From everything I've heard, you know, since then, I think he's probably worked on that side of things, and worked on his craft, and worked on his stand-up to where it would probably be more natural. I need to try to catch up with him and see where he is today. But I know how difficult it can be to kind of translate one humor to another. And so I want to kind of learn from those examples as well. And I can be just as filthy as Rob Delaney. And, you know, I don't know if I want to take that path or not. You know, there's some cheapness to that. You know, you can usually say the word fuck at the right opportunity and make someone laugh, or even, you know, like shit, with the correct delivery, and it's going to make people laugh. You know, it's almost a taboo language in some instances, where it can either be used to hurt people or to make them laugh based on the context. So, you know, I have to kind of decide if that's the way I want to go, especially when telling some of my old stories. Some of my old stories are things that could embarrass my family, you know. You know, they're going to listen to it and be like, oh man, we had no idea that, you know, Vince did these things. And so I've got to kind of think of that. You know, I've got to weigh embarrassing my family and shaming their name, and for the sake of comedy. You know, I think a lot of, and I have to figure out how comedians do such a thing. You know, do they worry about that? Do they worry about offending the people close to them? If, you know, because a lot of the stories are so much about maybe wives or children, or other, you know, people in their family, mothers, fathers. Do they think about those things? Does it bother them that they're talking about these things, and are they cognizant of how it's going to affect them, or are they just going for the laugh and have told their family, hey, listen, I'm going to bring up some dirt, I'm going to say some things that are going to shock you, but it's all just part of the storytelling of comedy. I'm not trying to personally hurt anyone with these stories. So, you know, I think there's a lot of angles to this that I haven't really thought of, and I think that's a kind of a great way for me to kind of do this and to talk through it, and to document my process. Another thing I need to learn to do, I mean, I have come up with bits in my head before and thought about them and thought they were pretty funny, but I don't use them. I never had a practical use for them. I didn't write them down, and now I've forgotten most of it. So what I need to do is also kind of get in the habit of writing down little bits that I may come up with, or just even funny ideas. I figure I need to have little separate buckets, you know, a bucket of ideas that filters into a bucket of potential jokes and kind of do a rough framework, and then another bucket of, okay, here's the actual joke that I'm going to pull out of this. And I've got to, you know, be able to filter those buckets properly to hopefully get something funny at the end. Because, you know, I would imagine coming up with, I mean, let's see, I've been talking right now for almost 15 minutes. And it's felt like, you know, 40 minutes already. I can imagine what it's like doing comedy on a stage and trying to make people laugh. And I may be a little aggressive saying I'm going to do 45 minutes to an hour. I think that's where a lot of professionals are right now. And I think people that are starting out are usually going to a live mic night and starting out in a comedy club and only doing probably maybe 10 minutes. I don't know. This is hopefully a place where I can get feedback like this. I'd like to be able to. I'm actually gonna, once I post this, I'll post it probably to SoundCloud, and probably ask comedians to give me some feedback, to let me know. Once I start doing jokes, maybe they can give me some hints. I'm hoping that I can get some of that interaction from people. I'm going to try to learn along the way. I'm going to watch a lot of comedy with kind of a different mindset of their timing and their craft. I think that's one thing I do have on my side, is I think I do have good comedic timing. I've watched enough to kind of understand, anything from a dramatic pause when you're telling a story to possibly making a face or a reaction based upon what you tell in kind of a natural way. That's something I have worked and thought of. I've got a lot of friends that I think are pretty funny that hopefully can also help me along the way with this as well. A lot of the jokes that I do come from conversations that I have with them, and we naturally feed off of each other. So that's the point of this. This is episode 1. I'll even document what I was thinking and calling it. I think I'm going to call it Standing Up, because eventually that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be standing up, so I'm the one doing the stand-up. It's not particularly clever, I know. It's not all that funny, I know. I'm hoping to get there. But I'm just starting out. So if you do have any feedback, you can email me directly at dtmmmb.media@gmail.com if you want to send me an email. You can reach me on Twitter at either VitaGeorge, or you can also get me at DTMMB Media. I'm basically running both accounts. I usually use DTMMB Media mostly now, just because I'm also trying to promote the site at the same time as an outlet for myself. But feel free to reach out to me. You can comment on the SoundCloud. However you can get a hold of me, you can Google me, whatever you want to do, and I'll be glad to talk to you, because I really want your feedback. So I appreciate you listening. Hopefully I'll have maybe the start of some jokes next time I do this. I don't know how regular I'll be in doing this. Probably as I have content. I don't want to come on here and waste your time like I've already done for about 17 minutes now. So I'll just see you next time. Once you have it posted, please subscribe so you will catch the new episodes coming out. Thanks.
This has been a Don't Tell Me My Business Media production.
Keep that dog quiet!